morning, good afternoon, or good evening, my fine friends. Welcome to the 100th episode of the Tom Petty Project podcast. I am your host, John Paulsen. This is the weekly podcast that digs into the entire Tom Petty catalog, song by song, album by album, and includes conversations with musicians, fans, and people connected with Tom along the way. Today, I'm talking with Kevin Brown, host of the Tom Petty Project podcast, which today is celebrating its 100th episode. How are you doing, Kevin?
I'm doing very, very well. Excellent job on the intro too, John, may I say.
I'm bad at reading things, but I think I got through it on the second try. So here we are. What a journey it's been for you, 100 episodes. What's your personal Tom Petty journey? How did you get into this music?
Well, I think, like everyone, I definitely heard Free Fallin', Won't Back Down, Running Down a Dream, because Full Moon Fever was just ubiquitous. It was a worldwide hit. Everyone knew that record. But I think my first real sort of exposure to him would have been the Wilburys, because my dad's a huge Beatles fan, as am I. And so he definitely would have been into, because George Harrison was his favorite Beatle, as should be everyone's favorite Beatle. And so the Wilburys, I think, was my first exposure. And it was that thing of, well, who's this Tom Petty kid who's hanging around with, Roy Orbison, Bob Dylan, Jeff Lynne, and George Harrison? Because I didn't have that context of him being anyone, right? So I didn't know who he was. And then, so that's the first time I definitely would have heard his voice. And Cool Dry Place is probably my favorite Wilbury song, which obviously Tom sings lead on. So that's kind of, I think, how I floated into it. And then when I moved to Canada, and I'd say about probably 9-10 years ago, was when I started going back and listening to the catalog. Because I'm sure you do the same. Like you'll find a new artist or someone you listen to, and they've got an extensive back catalog. It's like, right on, man. Now I get back to go back and listen to years and years and years of evolution. And so that was sort of when I started realizing that, oh, wait a minute, this isn't just American Girl, Free Fallin', some of these big hits that I knew. This guy really is a seriously good songwriter. And then as soon as I got to Wildflowers, it was game over, and I was hook, line, and sinker, right? Because that album just blows you away the first time you hear it.
So what prompted you after that sort of journey to start the podcast? Digging, because I've always looked, every year or so, I look to see if there's a podcast dedicated to Tom Petty's music. And, you search Apple Podcasts, you search Spotify podcasts, the other podcast platforms, and there's the occasional episode that kind of focuses on an album, or, there was an emergency podcast when he passed away, a couple of guys talking about his music, but never a whole podcast, an entire podcast dedicated to his music. So what prompted you to start it?
Definitely sort of that idea that I really, sitting down one day and I had a few beers and was listening to Tom Petty and thought, I had a sort of a gap. I'd done a podcast with my friend Randy about a year and a half before, and it just sort of, we did a season of it and it just sort of petered out through no lack of wanting to do it, just time and these kinds of things. But I thought, well, for me to do something like this, I can manage this. It's going to be, I think, 10 minutes an episode. I can do one a week. It's something I can do on my own. And maybe I'll find some nuggets of little songs and things that, I'll get into. So it's sort of a way for me to discover the back catalogue in a little bit more depth. And also just for something to do, because I enjoy being creative and I enjoy podcasts. I think it's a fun thing to do. So I thought, well, yeah, that seems like a good thing to do. So I thought, there's 16 albums, so that'll be great. It'll take me about 2.5 years and that'll be cool. And then I found out about American Treasure and Playback and all the live stuff and all the other deep cuts. It's like, oh, this is going to be quite a bit more of a project. And it just ballooned out from there. So, yeah. Well, and I should say to you, the other thing, this stupid, naive thing was I thought, man, going song by song through an artist catalog, this is going to be totally unique. I bet no one else has ever done this. But of course, there's hundreds of these podcasts out there. I was like, oh, all right, well, maybe I'm not quite the genius I thought I was.
Well, nobody had ever done it for Tom's music. So thank you. I'm sure there are plenty of fans out there that are happy that you took on this labor of love. But how did you decide on the format? Did you kick around a few different formats, or did the format come to you right away?
Yeah, I should go back sometime and have a look at my sketch pad, because I sat down for about a week when I decided, yeah, I think I should do this. I thought, well, exactly that. What am I going to do? How do I rate these? Do I rate them? Do I give them ratings? Do I go through and play the song in the episode? I thought, looking into copyright and those kind of things, well, that seems to be a bit of a sticky wicket. So I don't know if I want to get involved with that. Do I get a co-host? Do I get someone to talk about? Is it going to be, can I carry a podcast? I don't know. So I actually recorded a couple of demos, so to speak, and sort of threw them at a friend of mine. I said, is this like, do I sound like an idiot? Like, am I knowledgeable enough about music to talk about this? Am I talking about the right things? They're like, yeah, you could do this, you could do that. And I think that the bringing in the petty trivia was a big thing too, because that sort of was a nice break point in the middle of an episode to sort of stop me rambling on and on and on about the minutiae of music for a little while and sort of throw something in there that I can maybe get a bit of engagement with online or whatever. So it was just sort of a fairly natural process, but I definitely did tweak it. And it's funny going back and listening to the first three episodes, my speech is so labored and sort of, because I haven't got my flow yet. Like you said, reading something, people don't realize, like reading from a script, it's harder than you think it's going to be. And so when I record my episodes, if the episode say is, I don't know, like say it's 15 minutes, I've recorded 25 minutes because I stop like, and coughing and spluttering and stumbling over my words. And then it's another like, hour and a half to edit. So it sounds easy and concise, but people should try it now and again.
Yeah, it's tough to, having done this on both ends, being the host occasionally and the guest quite often. It's definitely a different monster when you are by yourself doing a podcast that you're kind of reading from script, which you've written because you want to get all this information across to the listener. And you stumble here and there. You want to make it perfect, so you go back and do it again. It's definitely a big challenge to record. So that kind of brings me to my next question. Maybe other than getting through each episode without stumbling, what have been the biggest challenges with the podcast?
Well, I mean, like any podcast, right? It's trying to find out, how do you get people to listen to this thing? Where are my people at, right? So stumbling across the Tom Petty Nation on Facebook was a huge thing, right? Because that really is a condensed, really sort of rabid sort of fan base that's just there, accessible. Now, of course, you can't sort of promote stuff on that page, so it makes it a little bit tricky getting around some of that stuff. But that was kind of the biggest thing was, well, is anyone going to listen to this? Because I mean, I think we talked about this offline maybe once, that I would have done it anyway. Like if I was only getting 12 listeners an episode, I would still do this because the benefits of doing it are not just, I'm not making any money off it, right? So the benefits from this are all sort of soft benefits. So it's me growing my appreciation for Tom's music and finding this little community and, meeting people like you and Gwen Jones and these other people who live on the other side of the world, but we've got this common connection. I found that actually they're really cool people as well. So yeah, I think that would have been the biggest one. And then the other thing was trying to find out whether anyone would talk to me. And so God bless John Scott for straight off the bat sort of taking a real swing on this indie podcast from Canada with no listenership and sort of agreeing to be my first sort of big guest on the show. So that was super cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and John Scott's such an important figure in Tom's career. So quite the get for you. And I think watching the podcast from afar, it was always one of my ideas in the back of my head that to do a Tom Petty podcast. I was hoping to do something more album centric, just kind of more of a conversation. And when I saw that you launched this, I hit you up and we started chatting and I gave you my kind of pitch, but you were very open to having me on and to talk about these album wraps and to go through these albums, discussing the best songs and songs maybe that we don't like as much and all these B-sides and everything like this. Just it gives me a chance to completely geek out. So I appreciate you having me on. And the other thing I would say is that, as you start a podcast, especially with something like this, which is Tom's music, it's so timeless, is that your listenership, you may find that it grows over time. People finding the podcast later on, and it might be 30, 40, 50, 100 episodes in before you find your complete listenership, and maybe not even then. I mean, I think years go on, people are going to come back and find this podcast. So it'll be there till the end of time, Kevin. So I hope you feel good about that.
It's a document, right? It's a document. And that one thing that I just wasn't deliberate that I found, or I'm pretty sure from talking to other podcasters that said that, that was a good move, was I just named the episodes the title of the song, right? So because the name of the podcast is the Tom Petty Project and you've got the name of the song in there, so people are searching the song on Spotify, they're going to stumble across it every now and again. So I'm sure I get some accidental listeners just from that sort of accidental, bit of an accidental bit of genius.
Yeah, I do wish that the copyright stuff wasn't such an issue and that we could play the music as we talk about the albums and you could play the songs. It makes it a little bit more difficult, but hopefully everybody can find the music the proper way and listen to it around your podcast. So my last question before we get into some trivia is, what have been the biggest surprises in doing the podcast? Like what things have popped up that you really weren't expecting as you got into it?
That's a good question. I think, like I said, I think definitely one of the surprises is that that people like John Scott, Paul Zollo, Jeff Slate, Jake Thistle, they sort of that they want anything to do with this indie podcast. Because, like I said, there's no reason for those people to jump on my podcast. They're not really going to get that many more sales out of it. Certainly, John Scott wasn't at that point because my listenership was really low back then. So just that sort of, I was surprised by how many people are so passionate about not just Tom's music, but Tom as well. I didn't know that, because until you get into the fandom, the music's the music and you love the music, but you don't realize there's this whole community that kind of rally around Tom's ethos and his values and all this kind of stuff, right? So I didn't know any of that. So that was a pleasant surprise. And then I think the other one was really, I always go back to this, but it's how much more appreciation I have for him as a songwriter now. Just because until you really sit, or for me anyways, until you really sit and listen under headphones and listen carefully to each individual part, you can dismiss some of these songs as sort of throwaway pop songs, but there's so much going on in them, and they're very deliberately and very cleverly put together that's just been a joy. As a huge music nerd, I just love that stuff, right? That's what I listen to in other podcasts. So to be able to get that into my own brain, that's been huge.
And I said that was my last question, but now I have one more. Is Tom Petty your favorite songwriter?
Yes, absolutely. And he definitely wasn't when I started the podcast. I would say that that's what's changed. Is I've gone from being a big Tom Petty fan to thinking that I generally think he's a better songwriter than Dylan, which I know is a strong call, but I stand by it.
I agree with it. I do. All right, let's do a little Tom Petty trivia. I wasn't sure how deep to go on this. I don't want to make you look bad, but also I'll start off with which I think is a slow pitch.
Okay.
Which famous drummer appears in the video for I Won't Back Down?
Ringo.
Okay. That was just warm you up there.
That's a softball beauty. I love it.
There are two other guitarists that are famous that appear in the video. Can you name them? Not counting Tom Petty or Mike Campbell.
Oh, geez, no. Is George in it?
George is in it.
George Harrison, and specifically a guitarist, not a singer guitarist, or is it? Because I'm trying to think now.
Yeah, he's a singer guitarist.
Oh, I do know this, and I can't think of it.
Who would have been around during Full Moon Fever?
Oh, no. His name's gone. Not Lindsey Buckingham.
No.
Well, that can't be Jeff, because
it's Jeff.
Oh, okay. Well,
Jeff,
I wasn't thinking, because I don't think of him as a guitarist, right? I always think of him as
he was playing guitar.
Yeah, okay, right. Okay.
Yes, George Harrison and Jeff Lynne were singing backup vocals at least in the video. I think it does sound like them on the recording as well. You might know that.
For sure.
So this is right now we're in the middle. We're going to get into a moderate question here. Tom Petty released 5 studio versions of songs with U.S. state names in the title.
Okay.
Can you name all 5?
Well, California, obviously.
Yes.
You have to give me a second now to think about this.
It's all right. This is the tough thing about trivia. You have to vamp while the person thinks about the answers.
Well, not Florida, because there's Tampa Bay, and there's a few references to. I'm trying to think now.
Yeah, 5. Those are city names.
There's 5, really.
There's 5, and I double checked this morning, and maybe I missed something, but there's definitely 5.
Georgia, yeah, Louisiana,
Georgia, Louisiana Rain, driving down to Georgia, California. You got 3.
Yeah.
Now these last 2 are a little tougher.
So are they album tracks, or are they deep cuts, B-sides?
One is something that appeared on a box set.
Oh.
Not well known. And then the other, pretty well known, but it's a little bit of a trick question.
That's a really good question. I'm trying to think of the other 2 now. Okay, so I think I'm bottling myself in, because I'm thinking Midwest, and that it probably isn't Midwest. You know what? I think you've got me. I think I might have to tap out on this, and I'm probably going to kick myself, aren't I?
All right. One was from the playback box set. It was the last track on the Nobody's Children disc. It's Up in Mississippi Tonight.
Damn it! How did I not get that one?
That's a pretty song that we need to discuss at some point.
Yeah.
And then the last one is a trick question. I thought this might be the one that you would blank on, because technically the name of the state is in the title, but it's really a character's name. Leave Virginia alone.
Oh,
So
good
I didn't know
work.
if your
Yeah.
head would like go
No,
that direction.
I
With,
don't think I would have done that one.
that.
Beautiful.
So those
I
are,
love it.
all right. So and maybe there's a giant Tom Petty fan out there that is screaming at their podcast saying that you forgot blank, but this is those are the 5 that I came up with. All right. So now I love chart performance and discussing how Tom's music has done over the years. Tom Petty had 10 songs peak at number 1 on the US rock chart. How many can you name?
I think I did this the other day.
Oh, you did?
Well, I think I was looking through it. I think it might have been one of my trivia questions, but I think I said which one wasn't. So
okay.
On the rock chart, because I mean he didn't have a number 1. So we're gonna obviously Free Falling, Won't Back Down, Running Down a Dream. I don't think Refugee was. The Waiting.
The Waiting,
wasn't
that's
it?
4.
Yeah, The Waiting was. Nothing off Southern Accents. Was You Got Lucky?
Yes, you got 5.
Into the Great Wide Open.
No. Let me double check.
I can't think of anything else off Full Moon Fever that would have been top 10. I don't think You're So Bad would have made number 1. So I'm gonna go Into the Great Wide Open. Well, it's got to be around there though. Okay, so Wildflowers.
You got 5, right? You got 5, right?
Mary Jane's Last Dance.
Yes. 6.
You Don't Know How It Feels.
Yes, 7.
I don't think Walls did.
Nope.
And I don't think anything afterwards did either. But I might be wrong on that one. So I'm gonna have to go backwards then. Okay, so Learning to Fly.
Yes, 8.
Okay, I said that I didn't think Refugee, but is Refugee? Did Refugee make number 1?
Refugee did not.
No, I didn't think it did.
I confirm that it did not.
I don't think anything off the first 3 albums did. So I think The Waiting was the first one.
I could confirm that.
Yeah, okay. So Long After Dark, You Got Lucky. I don't think anything else off The Dark. I'm pretty sure nothing off Southern Accents. Oh, geez, Louise, of course. Don't Come Around Here No More.
No.
It didn't?
It didn't.
Oh. Okay, then.
It peaked at number 2.
Oh, I think, did Jammin' Me hit number 1?
Jammin' Me hit number 1.
So that's 9.
This last one was the one I was like, those Jammin' Me and this other track were the 2 that I thought would stump you if something stumped you.
Okay, well then maybe something did off one of the later albums and I'm missing it.
No, you were correct. It's not off of anything past Wildflowers.
Yeah, maybe it's off what? Well, not Honeybee, because I don't think
I phrased that very
probably
in a tricky way.
No, I don't know. I was released a single. You know what? I got 9 out of 10. I'm pretty pleased with that. What's the 10th?
The 10th is Out in the Cold from Into the Great Wide Open.
Really?
Into the Great Wide Open.
Wow.
Peaked at 4, by the way. The track. All right, so 2 more finished at number 2. You named one of them in guessing. Don't Come Around Here No More.
Yeah.
One more track peaked at 2, and it was not off of anything after Wildflowers. Do you want to name it? You want to try to name it?
You Wreck Me?
You Wreck Me. Very good.
Okay, there you go.
You did well. You did well.
I only had 2 false guesses, so it's not too bad.
You did well. Like I was thinking maybe 3 or 4 false guesses. You did a good job. Also, just scrolling down his wiki page, he had 3 with the Wilburys, Handle with Care, End of the Line, and She's My Baby, which I listened to again this morning because I kind of forgotten about that track off of volume 3. Those 3 finished the US rock chart, peaked at number 2. Of course, Stop Dragging My Heart Around peaked at number 2. I don't consider that a Tom Petty track, and then he was on with Roger McGuinn on King of the Hill. That also peaked at number 2. So interesting.
Yeah. It's crazy though that nothing after, when you think about the quality of the songs after Wildflowers, but some of the stuff off, Echo or Last DJ or Mojo or any of those albums, there's stuff there that really should have been charting higher than it did, but
Yeah, that was actually something that might come up with my next question here. He had 4 songs peak at number 1 on the AAA chart, the adult alternative airplay chart.
Oh dear God.
And that these 4 do not overlap with the previous chart we were talking about. So these are 4 new songs we haven't discussed. And the AAA chart, the only hint I'll give you is that it seems like it came out later. It wasn't throughout his whole career.
Oh my. Okay, well then if we go with I should have known it. Mojo?
No. That peaked at 4. It peaked at 4.
Okay.
That's a good guess. It's a solid guess.
Swinging?
No.
Swinging. Did he release that one?
He did release that one. That peaked at 11 on the AAA and 17 on the US rock chart.
Forgotten Man did that?
No,
because I know. Well, because Hypnotic Eye did well though, didn't it? I think that was the first album or the only album that went to number 1. So I was kind of thinking maybe one of the tracks off that one made it then.
Forgotten Man peaked at 24, and You Get Me High peaked at 2 off that.
Oh, okay. Let's go back a bit then. All or Nothing?
No.
Saving Grace?
You did.
Oh,
yes. Saving Grace.
Okay.
You did. Okay. So then that's one of the 4. You did mention one of the other songs in one of your guesses. I think you referred to it earlier.
I don't know. Now to scan back my brain. You're making me think, John.
Let's just say these are all off of albums after Wildflowers.
Okay.
Not past
Waltz?
Wildflowers. Yes, 2.
Okay. So let's flip over there. The Walls.
Then there's one you're just not going to get. So.
Okay. So there's one left that I can get, and one left I've got no chance on. Okay, good.
Well, you might get it, but I wouldn't have guessed it
just by blind guessing. I'm like, okay. So let's just think this through. Okay, so she's the one. You got Walls and Angel Dream. I don't think Angel Dream would have hit number 1, so I'm going to discount that one. Okay, so we go to Echo.
I will just mention to fill the time here, the second biggest single from She's the One was actually Climb That Hill. It peaked at 12 on AAA and 6 on the rock chart.
Oh, cool. I didn't even realize he released that one. That's cool.
Yeah.
Not what you would think of as a single, actually. Thinking about that now, really,
Yeah, let's go to Echo. Hint, hint.
Yeah, so, I mean, Room at the Top, but I can't see that.
Room at the Top?
Room at the Top. Oh, really?
You got it. Yes.
Oh, wow, okay.
I thought you were gonna guess Free Girl Now, which was 5 on the rock chart, 3 on the AAA, but Room at the Top peaked at 1 on AAA.
Oh, cool.
And 19 on the rock chart. So you got 3. Do you want to just tap out on the last one? I mean,
okay, so give me the album and I'll try and work it from there.
Well, okay. I think I might give it away. It's the no. Go ahead. Wait.
Okay, so it's not off one of the studio released, or no, one of the canonical one. Then it's off one of the. Yeah, because they released. Oh, what was it? Shit. I know what it is now, and I can't think of the bloody title. Oh, it was that one they released. It's off American Treasure, right? No, off the next one after. Oh, for God's sake, I'm losing my mind. I can't remember.
It's off a playback. It's off the Nobody's Children disc.
I can't remember. Go on. Put me out of my misery.
Waiting for Tonight. Peaked at 6 on the US mainstream rock chart and number 1 on the US AAA. I don't know. It says it's listed under other charted songs. So I'm not sure how that relates to the proper singles that they released, but that's a great tune. All right. So that wraps up. I think, maybe the listeners are tired of me trying to prompt you to pick get this trivia. That wraps up my trivia. So I had the rapid fire questions that you typically ask your guests, and I think it'd be fun if you have to answer them yourself. So
cool.
What's your favorite Tom Petty album, and you can only pick one?
Yeah, so I've obviously asked these questions a lot of times now, so I've had plenty of time to think about my answers. But surprisingly, when I was thinking about these today, I was like, oh, this is tougher than I thought it might be. Well, it's Wildflowers, definitely. I mean, it's just that album is not only because there's 15 tracks on it, and there's just the consistency is off the charts all the way through. The production it's one of the best sounding records ever made. And then obviously there's the tie into because of how important it was to Tom and what he was going through in his life. It's always going to be Wildflowers. I mean, Hard Promises would be my second probably, and then really Let Me Up and You're Gonna Get It would be the two that I don't listen to quite as often. But going through Let Me Up this season's been, I've had my eyes open to a couple of songs that I'd kind of glossed over a little bit, I think so. But Wildflowers, yeah, is my favorite.
Yeah, let's save that for the album wrap podcast for Let Me Up. Lot to talk about there. Wildflowers is a great choice. Certainly one that has moved up. It was already pretty high, but moved up in my rankings. Like it's as I got older, as I got into Tom's age, really, it hits you in the feels, a lot of it. Second question: Mudcrutch or the Traveling Wilburys?
Traveling Wilburys, man, it's just so much fun, that band, you know. And five guys with justifiable huge egos if they wanted to have them, but just came into a room, bashed out one song a day over 10 days and just had fun doing it. They wrote music just purely for the joy and the love of doing it, which is, I think, it's easy to forget that when you get caught up in the corporate machine. But for those guys to step back and just do that, I thought was fantastic. That's a Wilburys all day.
Side note: how cool is it though that Tom went back, reformed Mudcrutch, released 2 albums, went on tour with a lot of those guys, and gave them the rock band experience that they maybe missed out on by not being able to keep that band together. That's just loyalty. Like, it's just incredible to me.
And same comment, right? You're doing it for the love of doing it. There's no commercial reason for Tom Petty to go back and reform Mudcrutch.
It's actually a detriment. It's a detriment to his commercial success, because he at that point could have made more money with a Heartbreakers album. So just incredible. Third question: if you could join the Heartbreakers on stage for one song, what would it be, and what instrument would you play or would you sing?
Okay, well, I've got 2 answers because I can't play and sing at the same time. I just don't have that switch. If I was going to play drums, I definitely want to play Honeybee, because that song is just so much fun and it's hard and aggressive. I mean, I'd love to be able to play Fault Lines, and I have tried to death. I can play the notes, but I cannot get Steve Ferrone's swing. Like, he's got a very specific swing and it's really hard to master. So yeah, I think Honeybee, if I was going to play drums. If I was singing, I want to do I Won't Back Down. Because who the hell doesn't want 30,000 people singing, "Hey, baby," right back in your face? That would be so freaking cool, man. So that I'd definitely pick that.
And do you think that because did you pick Honeybee because you feel like you would not embarrass yourself with that?
I can play that song.
Yeah, you can play that one. Okay.
I can play it. Honestly, a lot of the stuff off Wildflowers, apart from sort of some of the shuffle stuff that Ringo plays, because again, Ringo's just another one who's really hard to mimic as a drummer. But a lot of that stuff is fairly straight. There's not a lot of stuff on that album that's super, super complex. And I can play, because that's what I do, right? I sit down with my electronic drums, plug in my iPhone, and I put songs on and I just drum along to them. So most of those songs I could pass. Honeybee, I played dozens and dozens of times. So I'm pretty sure I've got that one nailed.
Very cool. Fourth question: who would be your dream opening act at a Tom Petty concert?
People don't hack the questions often enough, and I'm hacking the question here. So I'm not just having one opening act. This is Tom Petty. We're going big. And so listen, check this out. It's going to be a great lineup. Okay. So Act 1, 30-minute set, Jackson Browne. Tom joins him on stage for the loadout. Act 2, 30-minute set, Billy Idol. Tom joins him on stage for Eyes Without a Face. Act 3, 45-minute set, Foo Fighters, when Taylor's still alive. Tom and Mike join them on stage for Times Like These. And then Act 4 to close the night, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and it's a 3-hour Fillmore-esque set.
Damn, you really thought about that. That's incredible. All right, so question number 5: who is your favorite band member other than Tom Petty?
Mike. Yeah, I mean, I love Benmont. I think Stan would be challenging to be around sometimes. I think Steve Ferrone would be great to hang out with. Scott Thurston would be great, and Howie, obviously, such a lovely man with too many problems. But Mike just seems like such an easy hang. He's a thoroughly decent human being, does that Tassie, the dog fund and everything, and obviously just a god level musician. Why wouldn't you want to hang out with that guy and sort of just watch what he's doing and learn? So Mr. Campbell, and he's also a style guru. He always just looks cool, man.
Yeah, just one of the. Well, I'll go to my deathbed saying maybe the greatest rock guitarist of all time. I don't know. So at least the most underrated. Perfect compliment to Tom. That's why they stayed together for so long. Sixth question: if you could see any Tom Petty concert from history, which one would it be?
So I got this down to 3, and I have had to pick one, but the 3 that I kind of narrowed it down to were the Whiskey in '77 when they opened for Blondie, because I just think when you see a band when they're still really fresh and really new, the energy you get from a bunch of musicians who still want it and they're hungry is totally different from a stadium rock act who are sort of just touring on, sometimes on reputation. So 77 would be cool. The Gainesville show from Running Down a Dream, I think, being in the crowd for that rendition of Southern accents would have been very, very spiritual. Or the last night at the Fillmore. I was looking back through. Have you ever looked at the set list for that last show at the Fillmore?
Yeah, it's incredible.
Insane. 40 songs, 23 covers. Their encore was 11 songs. So that would have been amazing. But I think, like I said, we've got a lot of concert footage of Tom in his later years. I think that Whiskey in 77, and even seeing Blondie in 77 would have been freaking cool too. And it's easy to forget too that was the LA debut for both bands. Neither of those bands have played. So to get them both on stage in the same room, like, my God. Yeah, that would have been super cool.
It would be really hard to pass up the 40 song Fillmore.
There's tons though, right? I mean, being in the crowd, Michael Washburn brought up a good one where he said, like, being in the crowd that night when Tom told everyone to quit it with the battle flags, just to see what the mood of that audience would have been and see if it shifted or whether if there's any real tension there, that would have been cool too. Because obviously that was a troubled tour, but the energy would have been completely different as well. So that would be another one that would be sort of a fourth outlier kind of thing that I kind of threw in. So
I'll accept that answer. Number 7, Walls Circus or Walls number 3, which is the better version?
Yeah, and I've modified this question in recent times and to say which is your favorite version, right? Because better, yeah, it's a bad wording, so that's on me. Number 3 still, because that's the version I heard first. I think that's the closest to how it was written. It's kind of that stripped down, super cool version. But I've really come around to Circus. I've been very surprised by most people say Circus. When I ask this question,
it's extremely catchy.
It is. It's very hooky, right?
Did Lindsey Buckingham? He did backing vocals on that, right? Did he do backing vocals on 3?
No.
Okay.
No, 3's clean. And I mean, my favorite version of the song though is that PBS live, the PBS special, the live version where he's got the black polo neck on. He comes out and he says, "Hey, everywhere I look is me." It's just so cool. But I mean, and one of the reasons I love that so much is because Scott Thurston's live harmonies on that song are just chef's kiss. It's so good.
Yeah. I picked Walls Circus when I appeared on the Last DJ on Tom Petty Radio. Love that song. Number 8, if you could pick any artist to cover any Tom Petty song, who would it be and what would they cover?
I've spent so long thinking about this question, and I've actually put together a set list of about 20. Like, if you're going to do a tribute concert, I've got my tribute concert nailed. But the one sort of really cool one that I think that most people maybe wouldn't think of is I'd love to hear ZZ Top do Candy. And specifically ZZ Top in 1980 in the Double Down live show that's online. That's so cool. And I realized that, you need a bit of time travel to pull that off, but we're time traveling this already. So yeah, ZZ Top doing Candy, I think would be just killer.
Yeah. You're making this up as you go. It's okay to time travel. You can do whatever you want.
And I would say too, that I'll quickly just say though, the two of the best covers I've heard recently, I know that you've got a good Spotify playlist with a bunch of covers. And I don't know if you've got Phoebe Bridgers' It'll All Work Out on there. If you haven't checked that out, it's really cool. Super, super cool. And then Cyber Attack's cover of Listen to a Heart, which I think I sent you offline. I don't know if you ended up listening to, but it's one that will give a lot of purists an absolute fit because it's so radically different that I just think it's killer. I think that's what art should be. And, someone who's taken a young artist who's taken a 30-year-old song, don't just play the same thing on guitar and make it sound like Tom Petty. Make it your own and find out where the heart of that song is for you. And that's what this guy does in Cyber Attack's version. So,
yeah, I posted, I think Freedom Fry's version of Mary Jane's Last Dance, and they sing it in French, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And I really like it. I posted it on the Tom Petty Nation, and I got a lot of pushback that it was not very good, but I like it. Music is subjective.
Absolutely.
What song do you most frequently recommend to people who don't know Tom's music?
Yeah, this is the worst question I wrote for this list by far, because it's the dumbest question, right? Because it just depends on who the person is and what they like. And when my mum said, "Oh, with your I've never really listened to Tom Petty. Can you send me a few songs?" It was a 35-song playlist because it's like, well, I can't leave this off. I can't leave that off. But generally, I think I'd go with Free Falling because it's, I could probably make a decent argument that it's the most accessible yet brilliant pop song ever written by anyone. I think it's just perfect. It's one of those weird, perfect songs that you wouldn't change a single note or do anything. Well, some people would change Jeff Lynne's production maybe, but yeah, so I'd probably go Free Falling.
And then imagine the person that doesn't know or hasn't heard Free Falling.
But being in a room with someone who's never heard Free Falling and watching them listen to it the first time would be crazy cool.
Yeah. I just don't know how you get through life not having heard that song, which was why I thought it was funny when Sam Smith got Or no, was it I Won't Back Down? I don't remember which.
It was Sam Smith, yeah.
Where he had see, I don't even know that song. I'm like,
I mean, come on, give me a break.
He got sued for, yeah. Anyway, number 10. Please describe Tom Petty in 3 words.
Well, we've kind of touched on it already, but I've thrown in a bit of a specific thing. I'm going to call it best American songwriter. I think he's definitely the best songwriter of all time, but that's so many words. But definitely the best American songwriter for me. So yeah, best American songwriter.
I like it. And I often get into arguments about, if is it Tom Petty or Bruce Springsteen? And I'm usually in the minority. Springsteen has a bit more in terms of fan base, but then you could throw Dylan in there as well. So it's a good crew. But I agree with you, Tom Petty. Songwriter.
What would be really interesting is to actually I should do a bit of trawl around the net and get a good crossover episode to get someone from a Dylan podcast and someone from a Springsteen podcast, and specifically compare their late stage careers, because that's where Tom Petty pulls ahead for me. Where Dylan kind of, the last 4 or 5 Dylan albums, where they're still fine, there's nothing wrong with them, but they're nowhere near the same level of quality or adventurousness that Tom had on his later stage. Mojo. Okay, well, I'm this established guy, but we're going to go into the studio and we're going to record all these songs live. So we're going to have to play the shit out of them and learn them. So we've got them down pat, like 100% recording level quality, and we're going to go do that. Oh, and by the way, we're going to go and do it in our clubhouse, not a studio. And then again, Hypnotic Eye, where he changes gears again and goes back to a really hard-edged rock and roll. And I don't remember Dylan, Springsteen, any of those guys taking those chances later in their career. And I think that's one of the things that's always tipped it for Tom for me.
And I was looking at Springsteen's record sales in terms of platinum, 5 times platinum, whatever. And he was ahead of Tom for most of the 70s and 80s. And then Tom with Full Moon Fever, Into the Great Wide Open, Wildflowers, had a stage to his career, that commercial stage to his career that I don't think Bruce had in the late 80s, early 90s. And I think that is certainly something that needs to be considered.
Yeah.
Even though back in the 70s and 80s, Springsteen sold a lot more records. I would say twice as many records, just off the top of my head, as Tom Petty. But I think you have to look at Full Moon Fever, Into the Great Wide Open, take into context the Wildflowers, the late 30s, 40s output for Tom, just incredible.
Well, and do people throw in the Wilbridge as well? Because those albums were big, man. They sold a lot of records, those two albums. So I don't know if people do sort of count those in. But the other thing I'd say is, aside from sales and, concert size and those kinds of things, I look at, as a songwriter, I don't think, and again, someone reached out to me by email a few months ago saying, hey, I heard you sort of, bashing the boss a little bit. I'm like, wow, I'm not, I hope it doesn't come across that way, because I love Springsteen. I think he's a great artist. He is, there's no question about that. But I don't think he's got as many looks as Tom Petty does. I don't think that there's the variety of styles of songs, the variety of sonics, the variety of subject. Like, because Springsteen writes about Jersey and he nails the shit out of it. He's brilliant at that. And he's got, like Secret Garden and Philadelphia and some of those other things. But I don't think he's got the same range of styles that he can do that Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers had. Not even close.
The guy I frequently argue with about this is a neighbor, and we're actually going to see Springsteen. We got pit tickets to see him in December. So it'll be my first time seeing the Boss live. So I'm excited about that. I've always been a casual fan of his, but
I was always more or less a Greatest Hits fan, and then I've gone back and listened to, Green Smash Report's a great album. Born to Run really is a really good album. Is it better than Wildflowers? Not in my opinion. Is it better than Full Moon Fever? Not in my opinion, right? So I don't know, but like I said, it's subjective, right? It's all subjective.
I think he owned the East Coast and the Midwest, and I think Tom owned the South, the West Coast, and some of the Midwest. So I think that's just kind of how it broke down. There's more people in the East Coast.
Those damn Yankees.
Well, that's our time. What is it? The blue-eyed or the
blue-bellied devils?
Blue-bellied devils. Yeah. All right, that's our time. So thank you, Kevin, for being a guest on your own podcast. Appreciated talking to you about the podcast. Thank you again for rolling out this project and putting all this work in. It's great talking to you every few months about each album, and we're really getting into the meat of Tom's discography coming up here. So I'm excited about that. Until we meet again, keep listening to and sharing Tom's music. Try to be kind. Try to say I love you to someone at least once a day. Stay safe and healthy. And Kevin will be back next week to discuss.
Oh, I don't know I'm not too sure exactly what the sequence is. I can't remember. It might be a guest episode, actually. I think it might end up being a guest episode. So we'll see.
Anyway, he'll be back next week with something.